Flipping a coin and hoping for guidance as a leader, it doesn't work that way. One must cultivate the effort to put forth a unique opportunity in order to be granted the permission structure to lead other people. Coaching, my friends, is the backbone of sport, fostering skill development, mentorship, and a sense of community, which athletes, spectators, and participants can feel a part of. It's estimated by the Sports Information Resource Center 1 in 4 Canadians have been involved in some form of coaching throughout the course of their lifetime, which represents one of the largest volunteer bases in all of the country, and the impact of coaching in Canada or around the world cannot be understated. Research also tells us that coaches have the most impact from a positive perspective in a young athlete's life. That's nothing new for my friend Jaime Elizondo. He's a high-performance coach, keynote speaker, a former coach in both the NFL and the CFL, who helps athletes, coaches, and professionals alike shift their mindset to achieve both high potential and elite performance. Jaime focuses on leadership, communication, and culture. He's got over 25 years of experience as a coach, utilizing the latest research in neuroscience, coaching, and psychology. He's a visionary who believes in the power of resilience, listening, and leadership as transformational cornerstones of any sustainable leadership model. He created the transformative, crush, and ice processes, guiding individual teams, businesses, and executives from high potential to elite performance. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn about your journey in sports performance, coaching, leadership, and everything in between. Great to see you on this Thursday morning, and thanks for a few minutes, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm excited to share at least some of my thoughts and my journey with you, but just to be of service, and that's hopefully that's what comes across in our time together.
Yeah, well, that's what life is all about. It's all about giving back, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So, Jared, just before we dive into the nitty gritty of our conversation, I'm curious to ask you, my friend, about defining your moment of difference in life. I know you've worked with athletes and professionals to upgrade their personal or highest of performance throughout many different roles in your life, my friend. So I'm curious, how do you define your defining moment of difference in life to this point in your life, my friend?
Yeah, Kevin, I appreciate the question. That's a great question. I think, one of the things for me is really those defining those moments really come in when you've been blessed enough to have an impact on somebody's life. And what I mean by that is I've been fortunate to coach with some of the best coaches and be around some of the best athletes in the world. I had the privilege of sitting in meeting rooms with Tom Brady, with Drew Brees, but I think at the end of the day, I think at least for me, when I define the things that are most important and most valuable for me are when I'm able to have a truly positive impact and influence on the people that I've been blessed to be around, whether they be players, coaches. And I think one of the things, Kevin, is you never really know what that impact is going to look like or when that impact is going to really affect somebody, whether it's in that moment or 10 years down the road. But I think for me, those have been the most defining moments and most special ones for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeremy, tell me, what do you think it means to master sort of your mental performance in life, and how do you think it's interconnected to becoming a high achiever? How do you think those two things are interconnected?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I think so many of us have so much, and that's why I phrase it going from high potential to elite performance. And what I mean by that is there's usually a gap in there, and a lot of it starts for a lot of us in what we tell ourselves, what we think about ourselves, and the mind chatter that we have, right? And athletes face this all the time. How can I quiet my mind? How can I feed myself positive self-talk? And how do I develop that mental toughness to be able to perform at the highest level when it counts the most? And I think it all starts with mindset, right? And the way I coach it, Kevin, is, our identity when we are first born is something that we don't choose. It's given to us. And that identity sometimes sticks with us in the long run. And what I mean by that is, for better or worse, and unintentionally more often than not, we're told what not to do early on in life. Sit up straight. Don't run around. Why can't you be like this person? And it isn't until later on in life that we begin to develop our own identity through choices. And those choices come from the mindsets that we develop. What is my mindset around challenge? What is my mindset around growth? What is my mindset around my own potential? And so we begin to shift our identity by shifting our mindsets. What is and that those 1 degree shifts really start to make a difference. But I think the difference, to answer your question, between the top performers and those that fall short in any arena in life is really based on their self-talk, their mindset, how they challenge themselves, and the things that they tell themselves on a consistent basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Jeremy, I'm someone who believes that we're the author of our own potential in life. So how do you think internal motivation is connected to our potential and highest performance, my friend? How do you think those two things are interconnected?
Yeah, I am blessed to have been surrounded by some of the best high performance coaches over the last couple years. And when you think about that mental toughness, that internal motivation that you talk about, right? It really, and I'll start with this. When you think of mental toughness, which is motivation is a huge part of that mental toughness, you can really define that mental toughness as grit, fortitude, confidence, self-belief, right? Perseverance, discipline, motivation, all those things. But I think it comes down to a state of mind. And that state of mind, that internal motivation that you're talking about, comes from this. You are directly responsible for the state of your life. You and you alone are responsible for that. And somebody shared this with me a long time ago, and they said, no one is coming. And that statement, no one is coming to save you. And that statement can either be very empowering, Kevin, or it can be very scary for a lot of people. No one's coming to save you in your finances. No one's coming to save you in your career. No one is coming. So when you begin to develop that mindset that I am responsible for my life, then that internal motivation starts to click in on a different level. Ben Newman, who's a good friend of mine, shares this, and I think he phrases it better than anybody else. Tapping into what is your burn, the thing that ignites your why and your purpose, right? Something that's deeper inside of all of us. And a lot of us don't know how to tap into that burn, that thing that really ignites you, because motivation can be fleeting right? But discipline is what kicks in. And so the ability to tap into that burn that allows us to do things that are really hard, that allows us to get up at 5 in the morning when you don't feel like getting up at 5 in the morning to go work out. I think that internal motivation and the best performers, both again on the athletic field or in life, have learned to tap in to what that burn is for them. And I think that's what ignites their motivation to go out and accomplish things on a daily basis. And then it comes down to discipline and having the discipline to do it day in, day out consistently over a prolonged period of time. And I love to use the you know the guys that we all know, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, right, the Tom Brady's. They just have an incredible. They've tapped into that burn, and they have an incredible amount of discipline. That's what lets them be elite.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jerry, to that point, I'm also curious to ask you about the concepts of mental clarity, emotional intelligence, and mental toughness, my friend. How do you think those two things are correlated or interconnected?
Yeah, clarity. Everything starts with clarity. If I don't have clarity around who I am, what my vision is, how I want to show up in this world, right? How I want to interact with others. If I don't have that clarity, it's hard to get started. Jason Redman talks a lot about this. When you don't have that clarity, you're kind of stuck on the X on the spot. And so I think for anything in life, it starts with clarity. And our clarity is going to be different, Kevin, 6 months from now than it is, today. And so clarity is one of those things that you're always looking for. Why am I doing this? What's my purpose and motivation? Again, how do I want to show up in this universe? So I think having that mental clarity around who I am and why I'm doing something is the starting point. I think emotional intelligence comes in our ability to regulate our feelings in that moment, right? Our perceptions of what others think of us. And EI encompasses so much, right? Our ability to evaluate what we're feeling, our ability to sit in it for a moment and say, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I feel doubt right now, but to not let it consume us is a huge, huge part of that ability to have emotional intelligence. But I think it all starts with clarity, and then our ability to assess what we're feeling in the moment is so important, both for athletes and for everybody on an everyday basis. Because if you don't tap into that emotion, then it's hard to shift out of it. And that's the power, is our ability to sit in a feeling or an emotion and to choose to respond differently and then to reframe it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jerry, one of our mutual passions is football, my friend. I started my career as a sports reporter, and I live for football season every year, my friend. And I want to know how your time as a football coach shaped you as a person, my friend.
Oh, I think the biggest thing, Kevin, and I think we're united by our love for football. I think one of the things is the importance of and I don't want this to be cliche, but teamwork and really battling more for the guy next to you than for yourself. And what I mean by that is on the best teams I've ever been on, and we were blessed to win a Grey Cup in 2016 when I was the offense coordinator for the Ottawa Red Blacks. Unfortunately, I lost two others, but and it's always much harder to lose than it is to win. But I think the common bond amongst those teams that I've been blessed to be on is that they truly will sacrifice because they want the guy next to him to experience that joy of winning more than they want to experience it for themselves. That's the first aspect. So I think it's taught me that we are just a very small piece of the puzzle in that bigger aspect of what it means to be a team. I think the second thing is that even though there's different roles on a team, right? There's the special teams players, there's the starting quarterback, there's the head coach, there's the locker room, equipment manager. There is no hierarchy in football. And what I mean by that is that's really important. We are all the same. We just might have a bigger job responsibility or more decision making. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things that football teaches you is the importance of us all being equal, right? We're all the same. And I think that's a really important aspect that needs to transcend, that can transcend over into everyday life. I think those are two of the lessons that stand out the most. And I think the last one that really resonates with me is the ability to connect with a group of individuals, because that is such a unique space when you're in a locker room, as you know, Kevin. That's a sacred space. And that's a space that, when you have that bond, when you have those moments, um, and I say this all the time being away from football now, I miss the fellas. I just miss being around the guys and that uniqueness, that chemistry, that bond that happens inside a locker room. I think those are the things that I cherish the most about football.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, I'm curious to ask you about the coach-athlete relationship and how do you think that's evolved over the course of time?
Yeah, great question. I think coaching is so different now than when I first started years ago, and I think everything in life and leadership, Kevin, starts with your ability to connect, truly, genuinely connect with somebody, right? And if you don't connect, then you can't build trust. And if you don't build trust, then how can you ever possibly challenge, motivate, push, right, each other? And so that relationship, I've seen it evolve greatly over time. Whereas when I was playing, it was basically, hey, go do what I told you to do. There's no questions asked. Now that relationship is different. It's a back and forth. I want to know what you think. I'm curious how you see the game. I want to look at it through your lens. And I think that showed up for me in my coaching is that in the sense that I trusted players. I remember I was the head coach at Edmonton, and our starting quarterback Trevor Harris at the time, and Greg Ellingson, who was a great receiver back in the day in the CFL. They come up to me and they say, "Coach, we want to make an in-game adjustment. We've been throwing this little bubble screen, and Calgary set up for a bubble pass." And I remember Greg coming up to me, and it wasn't going to him. That was the beauty of it. He called the adjustment so the outside receiver would be in great position to score a touchdown, essentially. And I think that part of that relationship is trusting in your players to make those kind of adjustments in games, even though that may not have been practiced during the week. And there's two philosophies on this, Kevin, right? There's everything we do on the field, we have practiced it. And then there's the philosophy of I'm going to trust my players to make an adjustment. And if it fails, I'll take the ownership of it, right? And so in that game, we made an adjustment. It was a double move. It ended up scoring a touchdown. It sealed the game for us against Calgary. And I think that moment goes back to the relationship that you're talking about, is trusting in your players, being able to see it through their eyes, through their lens, and having the confidence and valuing them enough to say, I'm willing to take this risk at this moment. So, but I think the input from players is so key now. It's such an important part to the dynamic of the relationship. But I think it goes both ways. I think they have to see how you see it through your eyes, and I think you need to recognize the importance of seeing it through their eyes.
Yeah, and Jerry, I'm curious to ask you about your time in Canada, my friend. I'm a native Canadian, so anytime I get to talk to somebody that lived and worked in Canada, I'm fascinated, my friend, to get your perspective on Canadian culture and what you like living north of the border, my friend.
I cherish my time in Canada, Kevin. There were so many great, and I don't know if you know this, but I met my wife in Canada. She's Canadian, and my daughter was born in Canada, so she's a dual citizen. I'm now a permanent resident of Canada too, so I couldn't be more excited about that aspect. But I absolutely love my time there. And you know what's unique is the people are unique. That's what I think I really valued the most about my time. And I think there's a great expression that somebody shared with me. Whereas the United States is the melting pot, of the world. Canada is the collage. And what I love about that is you get to truly be who you are in Canada. You don't have to strip down and assimilate into a different culture. If you're from a foreign country, you're welcome just as much as if you were native to that land. I think that's one of the things I love. I loved the ability to connect with people the game up there in the CFL is different in the sense that you have more of that interaction with the fans. I love that part of it, but every city I lived in was different. Kevin, Montreal was a great experience. Of course, that was before I was married. And Toronto, I loved. We spent a lot of time in Ottawa. We lived in Toronto 2 different times. Edmonton, it was cold. I'll say that, and it was sunny late into the night in the summer, which is always challenge. Putting your kids to sleep. But I think I love the people the most about my time in Canada, and I would happily live there again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jerry, I want to talk to you about mental resilience, my friend. I don't know how much you've read about my own personal stories, Jerry, but at the age of 9, buddy, I was in a hospital conference room, and I found out that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. And, when I graduated college, Jamie, because of my disability, it took me 6.5 years to get a job because news directors wouldn't hire me because they thought at the time that my disability would be a liability, my friend. So I sort of became a speaker by accident because, I had a story to tell, and if people weren't going to pay me to regurgitate my story, why not cash those paychecks, right? So tell me, my friend, how do you view the concept of mental resilience, and how do you think people can learn to build a championship culture in life?
Yeah, it's again, I love the question, and Kevin, I think you embody resilience. I think you and everything that you've chosen to do. A little while ago, I talked about mental toughness and how you take responsibility for your aspect of your life. You've done that, Kevin, and how you've chosen to take a path in life that says I will not be defined by this, right? And I think that's really, really important. And I want to honor you just for a moment for the continued work that you do, right? And the continued challenge that you push yourself to become better, to serve others, right? And to deliver a message that's really powerful. And I just want to take a moment and celebrate you for that and honor you for that, and because you embody resilience. And, I've studied a lot in this area of resilience. And, you know, if I could summarize it this way in very simple terms, because I think there's a lot of components to resilience, right? But I always say it's the ability to fall down, to get back up, to adapt, and to bounce forward, not bounce back, to bounce forward. But resilience encompasses a lot of different areas. Emotional regulation, right? It embodies, or self-regulate, impulse control, embodies optimism. Resilience really involves our ability to ask for help when we need it, right? And there's a great book, the Resilience Factor, which covers the 7 factors of resilience, and I've mentioned a couple of them. One of the other ones is self-efficacy, the belief that I can do things myself, right, or learn things myself. And so when you talk about resilience, I think we all are blessed with the ability to be resilient in certain areas over others. Some people have great emotional regulation. They can stay very calm in the moment, but they can't deny that donut, right? They're going to have that second donut because they struggle with impulse control. Some people might struggle with the sense of optimism. Others might struggle with the ability to reach out for help when they need it. So when you talk about the ability to be resilient, I think it breaks down into those 7 categories. And I think it's the ability to become proficient in mastering all of those categories to determine that level of resilience. But again, just by nature, we're going to be stronger in a certain area of resilience than others. But I think the Navy SEALs, and I love studying the Navy SEALs, they have a great expression that I share when I'm doing my keynote speaking and I'm coaching clients. And it's like they say, a lot of people think that they rise to the occasion, right? Like when the game's on the line, I'm going to rise to the occasion. That Michael Jordan rose to the occasion. Kobe Bryant rose to the occasion. And the Navy SEALs have a great saying to say that's not accurate. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. See, Michael Jordan had made that shot millions of times before because he practiced it. So the challenge here is what is the level of your training in terms of resilience? What are the things that you're doing to build that muscle, to intentionally build your resilience muscle, right? And because again, I think it's our ability to fall to that level. I've been here before. I can handle this. And resilience is directly correlated to mindset, right? And I think that those are the two things. When I talk about the crush it principles, I talk about the first two principles being courage and resilience. And the more courageous I am, the more resilient I become because I'm going to fail more. The more I step out of my comfort zone, I'm going to fail, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to build resilience. Courage and resilience are the ticket into the arena, Kevin. They just get you onto the floor. That's all they guarantee. But I think it depends on what area of resilience you're talking about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And tell me about the ICE process, my friend, because I know that you spent a lot of time looking at the psychology of it and the neuroscience of it, my friend. So tell me how you created the ICE process and what it's all about, my friend.
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is fun for me because a lot of people don't know what happens at halftime, right, of a game, and so there's 14 minutes where by the time the coaches come down, you can cut, from the press box, you can cut that down to maybe there's 10 minutes because 2 minutes to get back down, 2 minutes to get back up. So those 10 minutes are often the most crucial at halftime for making adjustments. And the ICE process was born out of the need to make adjustments, right? And those adjustments can come either at halftime, they can come for a company after a failed product launch, or they can come for somebody midway through their life. And so the ICE process was based on how can we have a process for how to make change in life, right? Meaningful changes. And how do we know that we're making the right changes? I think that happens for a lot of people. So ICE simply stands for identify, okay, and there's 3 steps to that: create and execute. Identify what went wrong, identify the insights, the impacts, and of where we were off. And I'll give you an example. At halftime, is it the game plan that's off? Is it the players that are not executing? Is it the defense that we're seeing that's different? So you got to quickly identify what is off. And then you got to create. And what I mean by create, you got to create concepts around how you're going to adjust. You got to create specific criteria for how you're going to move forward. And then you got to go out and execute. And before you can execute, who do we need to engage? What adjustments do we need to make? What needs to be enacted? We got to make these changes. And then it's a constant evaluation from there. So the ICE process really came as a method for giving people a true process for how to make change in life, whether, again, that's on the football field, in the middle of your career, or when something doesn't go right in business. And again, it's a process just for making change.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you as a motivational speaker, my friend, I know you focus on teamwork, resilience, and setting the right mindset and leadership, my friend. Fred, so talk to me about your emphasis as a speaker, my friend. And I'm also curious to know, what do you think is the greatest lesson you've learned in leadership?
I'll start with that one. I think the greatest lesson I've learned, and I've learned this by failing, right, and having success at the same time in it. I think everything in leadership starts with people. And what I mean by that is my greatest successes as a leader and my greatest failures have come from being able to effectively connect with others, right? And I mean true connection. And there are times when I've focused in leadership on the outcome rather than the people. I think everything in leadership rises and falls with people. And I've made that mistake, but I've also at times been really, really good at that. So I think that's the first component. That's the biggest lesson I've learned is how you connect and how you, and I mean true connection, Kevin, not the hey, how's it going? I mean true deep down being vulnerable yourself and saying, you know what, I'm not very good at this. I need your help. Hey, what's going on in your life? That true, meaningful connection. I think that's the biggest aspect of leadership. And then reflecting that and living that every day, right? Because people don't believe the message if they don't believe the messenger. And I think that's a really, really important part of leadership. To your first question, and which really centered, I think, around speaking and tying those things together. And if you can rephrase that question for me again, real quick, just so I'm on the right track for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious to get your thoughts on your message as a speaker because I know you emphasize like teamwork and resilience and making sure that we all know that we're sort of all in life together, my friend. So talk to me about your emphasis as a speaker and the messages you try to convey when you speak to audiences.
Yeah, great question, and thank you for redirecting me there. I think a couple things come to mind. Right, when you talk about things that break down, whether it's in companies, in marriages or families, or in sports, it always comes down to one of three or four principles: trust, accountability, communication, or connection. Right? Most people's problems, there's a gap in there, and so when I talk about the crush it principles and give people that framework of what it looks like to be crushing it in life and what does it look like to crush it as a team or as a leader, all those principles that are embodied in that acronym, which we only cover two of them today, are really focused on how do we improve those aspects? How do we build trust? How do we create a greater degree of accountability? How do we make sure we are communicating at the most elite level, right? And then how are we sure, how are we connecting? I always love asking companies when I work with CEOs, what's your plan for creating connection amongst your people? What's your plan for building trust? And what I found is a lot of people don't have a plan for building trust. They don't have a plan for creating connection. Right. And so, but most of the breakdowns in businesses and on the field always come down to a breakdown in one of those four areas. So that's where I tend to focus the majority of my time coaching. And then obviously the last one, the importance of teamwork and how all those things tie in to operating as a team. Because at the end of the day, Kevin, we are all part of some sort of team. All right. And just an important aspect of being the best teammate that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, we've got two questions left for you, and one of them is a two-parter question, but I wanted to sneak one more football question in for you, buddy. And I was curious to get your thoughts on the new kickoff rule in the NFL, my friend, and whether you like it and whether you think it'll bring more excitement to the game of football, my friend.
Yeah, we got to live, it's pretty much that rule in the XFL when I was coaching in the XFL. So it'll be interesting. It does change the game. I'm really excited to see how that rule, which in the XFL weather wasn't as big a factor, but how that rule comes into play in December and January when there's massive wind and massive, where weather can truly affect the principles of it. I do think it's I don't know if it'll be more exciting, but I know that one of the things that everybody's frustrated with is, the kickoff rule as it exists now or existed prior to was basically a wasted play, right? Kick it out the end zone. And so I think everybody's looking for a little bit more action. That's one of the things I loved about the Canadian punt return rule is the fact that you were always going to have a punt return of some sort. So it'll be interesting to see. Well, I'll hold reservation on my comments, but I think it will help increase the action.
Fair enough, my friend. And I'm going to end on a two-part question because I think they're interconnected. And Jerry, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the concept of inclusion from a leadership and coaching standpoint and how important do you think the concept of inclusion of all people is in society? And my friend, when you look at your own personal and professional legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
Yeah, two really good questions. And most people don't know this about me, but some people do. I was born in Mexico, and my name in Spanish is Jaime, right? Everybody just calls me Jamie, which has been fine. I've gone through that most of my life. But I think the one thing that I cherish the most about a football locker room is that those differences in our size, our skin, our background are really thrown aside because we football embodies, and a lot like a lot of other sports do, the essence of accepting you for who you are. And that's one thing that brings a locker room together. There's people that have money, there's people that don't have money, there's people that have dads, there's people that don't have dads that. And I think when we truly begin in society to operate the way a football locker room does, then we'll truly start living life correctly, because at the end of the day, we all have one common goal, right? And that is to put our best foot forward, to feel like we did the best that we possibly could, regardless of the outcome, because that's the definition of winning. And I think when we embody the differences in each other, skin color, thought process, right, and we don't get caught up in politics or differences, I think that's when society will truly start functioning the way it was designed to function, very much like a football locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Jamie, tell me if people want to get connected with the good work that you're doing, my friend. What's the best way they can do that?
To get connected with me, Kevin, is that the question?
That's the question. Absolutely.
Yeah, great question. I thank you for that. You can go to my website, Jaime, Jaime, Elizondo, Elizondo.com. You can always find me on LinkedIn, or Kevin. If they can always go through you, and you know how to get in touch with me. But I'll look forward to it. And I really want to thank you for this time, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to share some thoughts with you. And again, I want to thank you for all your work and all the continued emphasis that you do, to bring these types of conversations to light, but also more so to continue honoring you and your fight.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, my friend, and I want to thank you for being here and for amplifying the need for inclusive and together leadership, my friend. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to commend you for the good work that you're doing, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you having me on. It's a privilege.